The email arrived at precisely 2:30 in the morning, just as the cabin lights dimmed and the Chicago skyline faded beneath the clouds. Subject line, termination notice. Effective immediately. For a few seconds. I couldn't process what I was reading. I kept blinking, thinking maybe the screen hadn't fully loaded. But it had. It was all there in perfect clarity. My name, my role, and the sentence that made my heart drop through the floor. Your employment with Horizon Technologies has been terminated. Effective immediately. Your access has been revoked. Please do not return to any company property. No call. No meeting. No thank you. Just this sterile final notice. And the sender, Michael Carter, the CEO himself, the very man who shook my hand 2 weeks ago and said, "You're the only one I trust to pull this off." Lauren. I looked around the cabin. Everyone else was asleep, curled into their business class pods with eye masks and wine-stained pillows. I was alone with the hum of the jet engines and a silence that suddenly felt louder than anything I'd ever heard. 10 days. 3 continents. Tokyo for initial alignment. London for compliance. São Paulo for the close. I hadn't just participated in this deal. I'd built it. 3 global giants. 1 synchronized move to Horizon's cloud system. $1.5 billion across 5 years. And now I didn't even work there anymore. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not rage. Not yet. Just disbelief. Like someone had pulled the ground out from under me while I was still mid-step. I stared at the laptop in front of me for another full minute. Then, without saying a word, I reached under the seat and pulled out a second laptop. Matte black, unbranded, and encrypted. The one no one at Horizon knew existed. I opened it, logged in, watched the screen blink awake, and I smiled. They thought this was the end of my journey. They had no idea I'd already started another one. 3 weeks earlier, I was standing in that same glass-paneled boardroom on the 32nd floor in New York, watching grown men scramble to save a collapsing $400 million contract. The client, a notoriously difficult European consortium, had walked out mid-negotiation. Legal was in panic, finance was pointing fingers, and the VP of Global Sales had nearly burst into tears. I didn't wait to be asked. I just walked in, grabbed the abandoned proposal from the table, rewrote the core structure in 20 minutes, and requested a private call with the consortium's head delegate. By the next morning, the contract was not only salvaged, it was expanded to include 2 new territories. That wasn't my first miracle for Horizon. It was just the most recent one. After the win, there was a champagne toast in the executive lounge. People clapped. Michael gave one of his hollow grins and said, "Now that's the kind of leadership we need at the next level." Someone even slipped a promotion rumor into the hallway chatter. Executive Vice President. Global Strategy. The title sounded ridiculous, overblown, and overdue. Because I wasn't just a closer. I was the firewall. The one they called when the men in suits couldn't land the plane. I'd negotiated with energy giants, telecom empires, and foreign ministries. I spoke 4 languages, kept 2 phones, and lived out of airports for 7 years. I made Horizon look far more stable than it really was. And still, the title never came. A week after the champagne, I was told the promotion was in progress, then under review, then silence. At first, I thought I was being paranoid. Maybe they were restructuring. Maybe HR was slow. Maybe, for once, it wasn't personal. Then I overheard it. It was during a board lunch. I was in the adjoining conference room preparing a portfolio. The sliding door had been left slightly open. I mean, come on. One board member chuckled. Lauren's brilliant. But let's be honest. She walks into a room, and no other guy wants to speak. She dominates every pitch. Another replied, "Yeah, She's not exactly EVP material. She's more field ops. Field ops. Like I was some glorified negotiator they could fly around and then forget about. That moment stuck with me longer than the missed promotion because the truth was clear. They didn't want to promote me. They wanted to contain me. Too confident. Too polished. Too many wins that couldn't be redirected to someone else. I was the one they called when the deals needed saving, but never the one they wanted at the table when credit was handed out. I stood there in that empty conference room, holding the portfolio I'd spent weeks building, and realized something bitter but undeniable. It wasn't about merit. It was about threat perception. The quiet ones got elevated. The loud ones, especially the ones like me, got sidelined. And yet, I didn't storm out. I didn't raise hell. I returned to my desk, booked 3 back-to-back international flights, and got to work on the biggest deal of the company's history. Because if they wouldn't give me the title, I'd build one of my own. It's funny how betrayal rarely arrives with a loud crash. Sometimes it drips in like a slow leak, unnoticed at first, until you're standing in a room ankle-deep in water, wondering when it started. A year ago, Emily Carter was in trouble. She had just been hired into Horizon as a strategic advisor, a vague title padded by legacy, Michael's daughter. She had no technical background, barely 2 years of corporate experience, and one very large mistake, an unauthorized data transfer during a client demo that accidentally exposed personal information from a pilot partner in Singapore. It should have been a public scandal. The legal team panicked. The marketing department froze. And Michael, he called me. Clean it up quietly. He said over the phone, she didn't mean to. She just didn't know. I didn't argue. I pulled every connection I had, worked around the clock to contain the leak, and spun the story into a beta testing glitch that never made it past trade blogs. I even took the media call myself so her name wouldn't appear in any press notes. No one thanked me. I didn't ask for it. I told myself it was loyalty. That protecting the company meant protecting everyone in it, even the CEO's daughter. But loyalty starts to rot when it isn't mutual. 3 days before my trip across continents, I opened a shared drive to finalize our pitch materials for the Triad deal. These were the slides I'd been refining for weeks. Charts, analytics, proposal structure, all laid out with precision. There they were, perfect, exactly how I'd left them. Except for one detail. The document properties listed the author as Emily Carter. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe she had downloaded them and accidentally saved over. But as I clicked through the deck, I realized she had made subtle edits, rephrasing bullet points, adjusting the layout slightly, but keeping my entire structure intact. The bones were mine. The pitch was mine. The name on it wasn't. She hadn't even bothered to notify me. That night, I sat in my apartment with the city lights glowing just beyond the window. I stared at the slide deck until the lines blurred. And then I did something I wasn't proud of. I closed it. I didn't confront her. I didn't message Michael. I didn't tell a soul because deep down, I already knew what would happen. They'd dismiss it as collaboration. They'd say I was imagining things. Worse. They'd think I was being territorial or emotional. That word always came up when a woman questioned power. So, I said nothing. I packed my bags, I finalized my flight routes, and I told myself it didn't matter. But it did because the hurt wasn't loud. It didn't explode. It seeped in slowly every time someone praised her strategic clarity. Every time I sat in a meeting and watched her recite my words like they were hers. I had protected her, covered for her, saved her reputation. And now she was erasing mine. I've never been one to panic. Not when deals collapse. Not when executives melt down in boardrooms. And certainly not when my own future begins to shift beneath my feet. So when I realized the promotion wasn't coming, when I saw Emily's name on my slides and felt the weight of erasure pressing in, I didn't yell. I didn't storm out. I pivoted quietly, strategically. The truth was, I had already started building the parachute 6 months earlier. Not because I expected betrayal, but because experience had taught me power, respects leverage, not loyalty. Horizon didn't always look the way it did now. When I joined, it was scrappy, still climbing toward mid-tier status, full of sharp minds and real ambition. Over time, as investors poured in and politics took root, the soul of the company shifted. Michael stopped hiring the best candidates and started promoting the safest. The innovation team was gutted, compliance was weaponized, and anyone with independent ideas was gradually frozen out. Many of those people were my friends. Some were mentors. All of them, like me, had quietly kept building, just no longer for Horizon. I called the project Apex. No splashy pitch deck, no seed round fanfare, just a name, a legal structure, and a growing team of former engineers, product strategists, and compliance specialists who understood the pain of being left behind by the very machine they helped create. Every part of Apex was designed to correct the exact things Horizon had broken: agility instead of bureaucracy, transparency instead of control, and, above all, client-centered thinking. We didn't announce it. We didn't need to. It wasn't a revenge company. It was a future waiting to be activated. Still, I kept it quiet. I was still under contract, still earning their trust, and I had no intention of burning a bridge unless someone else lit the match first. That moment came sooner than I expected. It was during a long dinner in São Paulo, seated across from Luis Mendez, the CEO of Brasilcom, one of the 3 legacy firms in the Triad deal. We'd just completed our 3rd round of proposal fine-tuning, and he was nursing a glass of whiskey. His tie loosened. The pressure of billion-dollar decisions momentarily off his shoulders. He looked at me, serious, quiet, and asked a question I wasn't prepared for. What would it take for you to lead instead of follow? I paused, fork halfway to my mouth. He continued, You don't speak like an employee. You speak like someone who built something from the ground up. So why aren't you running the company? I laughed gently. Because someone else inherited it. He smiled but didn't laugh. But if you ever decide to change that, call me. Some of us prefer to back leaders, not logos. That moment stuck with me. Not because it was flattering, though it was, but because it mirrored everything I'd been trying to ignore. Clients could sense it. They felt the gap between the person doing the work and the people taking the credit. They saw the same things I did: the political appointments, the weakened innovation, the strange silences after strong results. And they were watching me, waiting. When I returned to New York, I didn't tell anyone what Luis had said. I didn't tell them about the side calls I'd begun receiving from Teleglobal's procurement director or the subtle inquiries from Euronet's legal team about alternative partnership models. But I did expand Apex's charter. I scheduled quiet meetings with my core group former legal lead, Sarah Kim, systems architect Jamal Carter, and ex-finance strategist Ethan Lee. We didn't use company emails. We didn't meet in offices. We met in apartments over dinner. On encrypted channels, every piece was falling into place. Horizon thought I was there closer, but I had already started something they couldn't see. A company that didn't need to close deals with power, but with purpose. If anyone had walked into the executive ballroom without context, they would have thought it was a coronation. Gold linens, crystal chandeliers, a live quartet. The company had spared no expense for the Strategic Growth Gala, which in reality was a celebration of Emily Carter's sudden promotion to Vice President of International Strategy. The irony was hard to swallow. I had built that department literally from scratch back when it was just me working from 3 time zones out of a suitcase, trying to convince European partners that Horizon wasn't just another over-promising tech firm. Back when the idea of international strategy was considered too ambitious for a mid-tier company barely holding its domestic ground, I had carved that path with grit, late-night flights, and fluency in 6-letter acronyms. And now I was standing under a chandelier, smiling through my teeth, holding a champagne glass I hadn't sipped from, pretending to toast the woman who had taken my title, my team, and my narrative. Emily was radiant. Of course, blonde blowout, sleek navy sheath dress, speaking points rehearsed to perfection. She clinked glasses with board members and dropped buzzwords like multilateral integration and cross-border scalability, while the PR team captured it all. "Thank you all," she said, lifting her glass. "It's an honor to take on this role and continue the strategic vision our company has pioneered." I stood behind her, half in the spotlight, half in the shadow, no mention of my name. Not a single reference to the deals I had just closed in Tokyo or the negotiation frameworks I had drafted. Sarah Kim, my former legal partner and now, secretly, one of Apex's founding team, brushed past and whispered behind her glass. "This is surreal." Surreal was generous. People I had worked alongside for years now avoided eye contact. A few of the more decent ones offered awkward half-smiles, the kind that said, "I know this is wrong, but I also want to keep my job." Michael took the mic toward the end, still tall, still smug in his perfectly tailored suit. He had the kind of voice that could sell sincerity to a room full of cynics. "We've watched Emily grow into this role," he began, "and I can think of no one better to lead our most important initiative yet, our global expansion through the Triad partnership." I froze. The room clapped. Then he turned slightly and added, "And she'll be shadowing Lauren on the upcoming trip as part of that transition." Shadowing me? As if I was a mentor. As if I had agreed to train the woman who'd taken the title meant for me in a department I'd built on a deal I was about to close after 10 months of grinding across time zones. I felt my stomach twist. I wanted to laugh or scream or throw my champagne into the ice sculpture shaped like a globe. Instead, I nodded. I even managed to smile, trained and sharp. People clapped again, and I pretended the sound wasn't nails against glass inside my skull, but inside. Humiliation burned like acid beneath my skin, not because they replaced me, but because they expected me to help her do it gracefully, quietly, like a good soldier who knew when to disappear. I took a slow breath and sipped the champagne for the first time. It was flat. Emily turned and leaned in, all warmth and performance. "I hope we'll have time to talk through the São Paulo structure before the meetings. I'm still trying to catch up on some of the European details." "You should," I said calmly. "They tend to ask tough questions." "Oh," she giggled. "Well, I'll just point them to you. You always know what to say." I smiled. The kind of smile that comes right before the drawbridge lifts, because I already knew she wouldn't be going. They didn't know it yet, but I'd already booked a second itinerary, one that didn't include her or Michael or anyone from the company that had just buried my name under a job title with a fresh coat of lipstick. By the time I landed in Tokyo, I hadn't slept properly in 4 days. The gala, the fake congratulations, Emily's smug request to walk through the São Paulo structure, Michael's backhanded announcement, all of it had worn me down to the bone. But none of that mattered now because what waited on the other side of each customs gate was something far bigger than my bruised ego. The Triad deal 3 legacy telecom firms, Teleglobal in Tokyo, Euronet in London, and Brazilcom in São Paulo joining forces in a historic cloud migration. It had taken me 10 months of whispered introductions, cultural navigation, and trust building to get them to the table. Now I had 10 days to close it. 3 cities, 3 continents. No margin for error. In Tokyo, the tension hit immediately. Teleglobal's CTO, Hiroshi Tanaka, was sharp, skeptical, and direct. "You promise security. So do your competitors. Why should we believe you offer more than words?" he asked before the tea even hit the table. I pulled up the encryption spec sheet I'd designed with Horizon's internal engineers. a document the board hadn't even reviewed yet. I walked him through the exact protocols we'd customized for multi-jurisdictional compliance real-time redundancy. Zero trust architecture, when I finished. He didn't smile. He simply nodded. I see why they send you. He said, the others. They speak, but they do not understand. After the meeting, we shared a brief walk to his car. I paused, then asked softly, and if there were a leaner model? Same tech stack, but fewer layers between need and delivery. Hiroshi turned his head. You mean less horizon and something like that? He didn't respond, but when he got into the car, he looked back and said, send the materials again privately, in London. Euronet's legal team was warier. The Brexit regulatory shifts had made compliance a nightmare, and Horizon's standard contract language was riddled with ambiguities. I'd flagged it before. They hadn't fixed it. So I fixed it myself. At 11:40 that night, sitting in a tiny flat I'd rented for 2 nights, I rewrote the terms using my own templates, ones we'd developed quietly through Apex's counsel. Sarah Kim, the next morning. I handed the updated drafts across the polished table at Euronet's headquarters. The GC, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia Evans, raised an eyebrow. This isn't the Horizon standard. She said, it's the one that works. I replied, unless you prefer a 3-week delay and 50 red lines. She skimmed the top page. You did this. Yes, off the record. Patricia smiled. Well, maybe next time we negotiate. You'll be sitting on this side of the table. I felt something flicker inside me. She wasn't just impressed. She was suggesting something, wondering out loud why I wasn't already the one leading the company I claimed to represent. And she wasn't the only one. By the time I landed in São Paulo, I was running on caffeine and willpower. The Brazil meeting was the final leg financial structure. Revenue share model, data sovereignty, all the red flags in one room. And worse. Emily was supposed to be there. Supposed to shadow me. She didn't come. I knew she wouldn't. I had changed the itinerary last minute, rerouting myself through Argentina, ensuring no internal team could track my movements in real time. Horizon thought I was flying in a day later. I was already on the ground, already working. The meeting with CEO Luis Mendez lasted 4 hours. He grilled me on risk thresholds, capital exposure, and long-term support models. When I held firm on the numbers the board had fought me on, he finally leaned back and exhaled. I trust you. Lauren, he said, tapping the table. But I don't trust Horizon. You know that. Right, I do. So if this falls apart later, it won't. He looked at me carefully. Unless you leave. That's when I leaned in. And if there were a way? I said, keeping my voice low. For you to get this deal without that risk, without the politics, the noise, the bottlenecks, would you be open? Luis didn't blink. You know the answer to that. 3 cities, 3 meetings, 3 quiet seeds planted, and in each one, the same pattern skepticism toward Horizon, trust toward me, not the logo, me. I carried the weight of the company across hemispheres, across time zones, across fatigue. I answered questions before they were asked, rewrote contracts on my own time, and stood between billion-dollar doubts and billion-dollar commitments. But I wasn't just closing a deal. I was opening a door. The cabin lights dimmed just as we crossed the equator. I had been staring out the window, the vast darkness below, stretching endlessly. When I opened my laptop to review the São Paulo meeting notes one more time, the contract summary was pristine. The numbers matched. The client was in. The deal was done. It should have been the proudest moment of my career. Instead, the screen glitched. The internal server booted me out. I tried again. Access denied. I clicked into Slack. Session expired. My company calendar disappeared. My Outlook went blank. Then an email. Subject termination notification. Effective immediately. Sender Michael Carter. I read the first line, and my chest tightened like a vice. Lauren. Effective immediately. Your employment with Horizon Technologies is terminated. All credentials and accesses have been revoked in accordance with HR protocol. Please refrain from engaging with any company clients or partners moving forward. No salutation, no gratitude, no explanation. Just a knife slid quietly between the ribs, 35,000 feet in the air. For a moment, I sat completely still. The flight attendants moved quietly down the aisle, collecting half-empty wine glasses from the late-night service. Around me, the other business travelers slept beneath beige blankets, blissfully unaware. My laptop screen blinked again, this time going black. They'd locked me out of everything. I reached for my phone. Same result. VPN blocked. Credentials invalid. Even my internal contacts list was gone. They had erased me. No warning, no meeting, no chance to defend my role. This wasn't a restructuring. This was an execution. And the insult cut deeper than the decision itself. They didn't even wait until I landed. They didn't have the decency to look me in the eye. They fired me in silence while I was midair, alone. After closing the biggest deal in company history, I should have felt rage. And maybe in some distant corner of my gut. I did. But mostly I felt insulted. Not because they let me go, but because they thought I was disposable, replaceable, powerless. They fired me like someone who hadn't just carried their entire international growth strategy on her back. They thought cutting access would cut control. They thought revoking my email would revoke my influence. They thought I had no backup. They were wrong. 6 weeks earlier, long before Michael's quiet power plays, before Emily's fake promotion, I'd followed protocol and initiated a private backup of my triad deal notes. The legal team had approved it as a precaution, standard for high-risk deals conducted across borders and languages. I had it all: the pitch decks, contract versions, financial modeling, call transcripts, even handwritten client feedback. They said I had no right to engage with clients. They forgot I was the only reason those clients were still engaged at all. I reached under the seat, pulled out the matte black laptop I never synced to Horizon systems, and placed it on the tray table. It hummed quietly to life. Encrypted, offline, untouchable. The wallpaper glowed in the dark cabin light. A simple logo, half-finished apex. I opened the encrypted folder. Everything was there. Each market strategy, every clause in every version of every contract. Secure, legally sound. Mine. The fury finally flickered, but not as fire, as resolve. Michael hadn't just fired me. He'd freed me. They thought cutting me loose midair would break me. But all it did was cut the rope holding me back. I opened a clean document, placed my hands on the keyboard, and typed 3 simple words: "Let's begin." Then I closed the lid and leaned back. Outside the window, the sky was still pitch black. But for the first time in months, I saw a clear horizon. The city looked the same. From the back seat of the taxi, I watched the skyline crawl past. Steel and glass towers soaking in late morning sun. Yellow cabs weaving in and out. Pedestrians rushing with coffees and phones like nothing had changed. But for me, everything had shifted. It was 8:40 in the morning when we pulled up to the Horizon headquarters. I paused before getting out. Staring at the building I'd entered almost every day for the last 9 years, it looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I was just seeing it differently now. Less as home. More as a place that never truly belonged to me. As I stepped into the marble-floored lobby, the security guard, James, who used to wave me in with a grin, froze. "Ms. Parker," he said, shifting awkwardly. I wasn't told you'd be coming in today." "I wasn't told I wouldn't be," I said calmly, holding up my badge. I pressed it against the gate. Nothing. Red light. Access denied. James winced. I'm really sorry. It's just HR flagged the system this morning. I nodded. I didn't argue. It wasn't his fault. He looked more uncomfortable than I did. But as I stood there, half in and half out of the place I had given the best years of my life to, a strange feeling washed over me. Not rage, not grief, just displacement. Like I was a ghost haunting a life that no longer existed. I waited for the elevator anyway. The receptionist didn't greet me. She barely looked up. Someone else had taken my name off the board outside the 27th floor meeting room. The digital display now read, Strategic Integration, VP Emily Carter. By the time I reached my old floor, the silence felt surgical. Every familiar face seemed to avoid eye contact. The junior analysts who used to greet me with eager updates stared into screens. One even stood up and quietly walked toward the break room the moment I stepped out of the elevator. No welcome. No question. No curiosity. My desk was already stripped bare. The plants I'd kept alive through jet lag and budget cuts were gone. The framed client thank you letter from Euronet vanished. Even my chair had been replaced with a newer one, the tag still hanging from the back. I stood there for a moment, staring at the vacant surface where my entire professional identity had once lived. My nameplate had been removed. Not moved. Removed. On a table nearby, I spotted a copy of the internal newsletter. The headline read, Emily Carter to lead Triad Partnership in Global Expansion Push. I picked it up and scanned the article. Following Lauren Parker's transition out of the company, VP Emily Carter will assume full control of the Triad client integration strategy. Transition, a sanitized word for what had happened. No acknowledgement of the woman who had built the deal. Flown across 3 continents to negotiate it, or personally salvage 2 of the 3 contracts from collapse. I dropped the newsletter into the trash. Then I left, back on the street. The city felt louder than before, the honks sharper, the air colder. People bustled past, and none of them knew or cared that I had just been erased. I walked a few blocks to the old hotel I used to use between international flights. They knew me there. No one asked questions. They gave me a room on the 15th floor overlooking the river. I closed the curtains, took off my shoes, sat on the edge of the bed. And for the first time in days, I allowed myself to feel it. The hollow space, not grief, not defeat, but the realization that the place I had poured myself into had never truly seen me. They had used my brain, my voice, my presence. And now, with the stroke of a key card and a press release, I had been deleted like a line in an outdated spreadsheet. But I wasn't broken. I was free. I pulled out my laptop, not the one they shut down. The other one. The black map machine that still held the future I had started designing in secrecy. I opened the secure client portal Sarah and Jamal had helped build. The encryption was flawless. Clean. Ready. I clicked open the contact list: Luis Mendez, Hiroshi Tanaka, Patricia Evans. And then, without hesitation, I sent 3 emails. Each one had only 4 words. The door is open. The morning after I sent the 3 emails, I sat in silence with a black coffee, a croissant I had no appetite for, and my laptop opened beside me. The room was quiet. No celebration, no champagne, no inbox overload, just stillness. But not the stillness of nothingness. The stillness before the shift, like the sky before a storm. I knew what would be happening back at Horizon. Michael would have walked into the Monday morning executive meeting already on edge. Maybe his assistant would have handed him a printed update about the Triad accounts. Except this time, there would be no forward momentum, no eager messages from the clients, no check-in notes from my side because I was no longer on their side. And neither, it seemed, were the clients, according to Sarah, who still had friends embedded in legal. Michael placed the first call to Hiroshi Tanaka at 9:15 in the morning. No answer. He tried again 20 minutes later. Nothing. By 10 in the morning. He looped in Emily and the interim strategic team. They attempted Euronet next. Patricia Evans had always been responsive, direct, efficient, the kind of person who replies to emails within the hour and doesn't tolerate delay. That morning, the line rang 7 times before going to voicemail, at 10:40 in the morning. A follow-up email was sent to her office address, a second to her legal team. Both bounced back out of office. Please direct all Triad-related inquiries to your current point of contact. Except they didn't know who that was anymore. By 11:30 in the morning, the panic had set in. They called Brazilcom. Luis Mendez's assistant answered and said he was unavailable. Unavailable today, Michael asked. No. She replied calmly. Unavailable for Horizon. He didn't know what to say. He demanded an explanation, but none came. Instead, the line went dead. Back in my hotel suite, I refreshed the client dashboard quietly. Apex's new portal, built with Jamal's design, tracked every client interaction in encrypted logs. It wasn't just smart, it was invisible. No public launch. No flashy announcement. Just clean, secure, human-first onboarding. All 3 clients had signed into the system within the hour after my message. Each of them had scheduled exploratory sessions with the Apex team. Nothing dramatic, just quiet steps toward transition. It was all happening without noise, without confrontation, no lawsuits, no threats, just silence. The kind that speaks volumes. The kind of silence that tells you everything you need to know about who still holds the conversation and who has lost it entirely. Horizon wasn't being attacked. It was being ignored. And for a company like that, silence wasn't absence. It was a verdict. Around 1 in the afternoon, Michael tried one last move. He had someone from investor relations reach out to all 3 client firms publicly, framing it as a consolidation update and requesting joint press statements to confirm Horizon's continued leadership on the Triad project. Only one of them replied. It was a short message. No greeting, no signature block. Horizon no longer speaks for us. You do. I stared at the words on my screen for a long time. They were simple, unpolished, but they held more weight than any title Horizon had ever given me. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I stood and walked toward the floor-to-ceiling window. The city pulsed beneath me, unaware of the quiet unraveling taking place 32 floors above where I used to sit. The place that fired me without a voice was now losing deals in a language they no longer understood. Not loud, not public, just gone. Sarah called that evening. They're scrambling. She said, Emily's panicking. Michael thinks you're behind it all. But no one can prove anything. The clients won't return any of their calls. They don't need to, I replied. Are you sure you don't want to? I don't know. Make a statement. Go public. I looked at the glowing monitor at the new Apex homepage Jamal had just published. It didn't say my name anywhere. No founder section. No about me. Just the logo. A line of code in the footer. And a promise. What we build belongs to those who build it. No, I said softly. Let them sit in the silence a while longer, because this wasn't revenge. This was clarity delivered without noise. And it was only just beginning. At 9:30 in the morning, the press release went live. No flashing banners, no launch event, no breathless LinkedIn threads, just a simple, elegant announcement published directly through Apex's media relations portal, distributed quietly, purposefully, and irreversibly. Apex Inc. is proud to announce a multi-continent strategic partnership with Teleglobal, Euronet, and Brazilcom. The agreement, valued at $1.5 billion over 7 years, will deliver secure modular cloud integration across 3 regions, redefining global enterprise connectivity. For media inquiries, please contact press at apex.tech. Signed, Lauren Parker, CEO. That was it. No mention of Horizon, no fanfare, just precision and presence. The emails started trickling in by 10 in the morning. Not from my former colleagues, but from journalists, analysts, VC scouts, people who had never heard the name Apex before this morning. People who now wanted to know how a company with no website until last week had just pulled off the most seamless acquisition of 3 legacy clients in a single stroke. By 10:45 in the morning, the first trade article went live, then 2 more, then 6. By 11:15 in the morning, Tech Pulse posted a headline that made me lean back in my chair, take a slow sip of tea, and smile the silent takeover who is Apex, and why is everyone at Horizon panicking back inside Horizon's glass tower? Silence turned to chaos. Emily had locked herself in the conference room with 3 of the junior comms managers, her voice rising just barely through the soundproof walls. Sarah had sent me a text from legal. They're trying to write a counter-statement. Michael wants to blame external sabotage. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Nothing to argue. Michael hadn't been sabotaged. He had simply been outmaneuvered. The thing about building power quietly is that no one sees it coming until it's already done. They don't know where it started or how far it spread. They just know suddenly they're not in control anymore. That was the difference between noise and clarity. Horizon had noise. I had clarity. By 12:20 in the afternoon, Business Insider called the move the boldest silent shift in enterprise tech since the Nexlify pivot of 2011. By 1:15 in the afternoon, Apex's inbox had over 70 partnership requests and investor meeting invitations, none of which we accepted. Not yet. Not until the foundation was fully sealed. Meanwhile, the clients Hiroshi, Patricia. Louise stayed utterly silent. Not one press quote. Not one explanatory tweet. They had no reason to explain. They had simply chosen differently. And they had chosen me. Jamal walked into the hotel suite around 2 in the afternoon with a bottle of non-alcoholic champagne and a printed copy of the press release like we were old-school startup founders. "You going to frame this?" he asked, grinning. "I might tattoo it instead," I replied. He handed me a manila folder. Also, financials. They're already transferring implementation budgets to the accounts. Sarah triple-checked everything. No hang-ups. I nodded and exhaled. Not with relief, with recognition. This wasn't luck. This was designed. Every move had been deliberate. Every conversation planted. Every client nurtured. I hadn't taken Horizon's clients. I had earned their trust while Horizon was too busy promoting power plays and empty titles. Later that evening, I got a short voicemail from a number I recognized but hadn't saved. Michael. I played it once, then deleted it before it finished. He didn't yell. He didn't plead. He just asked the same question they all ask when they finally realize what they've lost. Was this personal? Of course it was. It was also professional. It was strategic. It was overdue. I stood by the window that night, overlooking the city. The skyline no longer felt cold. It felt earned. They had taken everything with noise. I had taken everything back in silence. No announcement, no vengeance speech, just a name on a page, Lauren Parker, CEO, and the world watching. Not because I demanded it, but because the results spoke louder than anything I could have said. The conference room at the Global Tech Summit in San Francisco was lined with deep blue velvet curtains and polished glass tables. Luxury masking desperation. At 9 in the morning, Michael Carter stood at the front of room C214, flanked by his newest interim strategy lead and 2 compliance managers in stiff suits. The buzz outside was loud. Horizon had leaked news of a breakthrough partnership with a rising Eastern European cloud firm, hoping to signal recovery after the Apex collapse had rocked investor confidence. Only insiders knew the truth. This was not a breakthrough. It was a lifeline, and it was already unraveling. I watched from the back corner as they began setting up the projection screen. My entrance wasn't announced. I didn't need it to be. I had timed it for precision, not spectacle. Michael paced as he spoke softly with the prospective partner's CEO, a broad-shouldered man named Victor Novak. I had met him once before in Boston over a long dinner where we shared ideas on sovereign cloud hosting. He didn't remember me yet, but he would. At 9:15 in the morning. I stepped forward, calm, collected, wearing a slate gray blazer, a simple dress beneath, and confidence stitched into every step. Victor looked up and blinked. Lauren. Michael turned. The color left his face so fast I thought he might faint. I walked to the table and extended a hand toward Victor. It's good to see you again. Victor took it with a firm grip, confused but intrigued. You're here with I Represent Apex, I said, and I'm the other party in this negotiation. Silence rippled through the room like a dropped glass. Michael's jaw tensed. This is a closed session. Lauren? No, I said evenly. This is a joint session. Apex was invited after your firm submitted 2 conflicting statements about global rollout capabilities. The summit organizers requested transparency, full partner alignment. Victor nodded slowly, the pieces connecting in real time. I opened my folder and laid out Apex's infrastructure map clean, updated, tailored to Victor's firm's regional expansion plan. Our model was leaner, faster, tested. His CTO had already signed off on the specs privately. Pending this final review, I understand your position, Victor said to Michael. But we can't afford another misalignment after what happened with Triad. Michael cut in. That was sabotage. I didn't flinch. That was foresight. I offered them a choice. They chose clarity over politics. Michael turned to Victor. You really want to work with someone who abandons her company mid-deal? I smiled. Sharp. Quiet. Composed. I don't abandon ships, I said. I rebuild them without the ones who drilled the holes. There was a beat of silence. Then Victor looked at his legal team. We'll proceed with dual review, he said, and I want Lauren's proposal considered as primary. Michael stepped back like he'd been hit. I could have ended it there. I could have taken the win quietly and left him to rot in the tension of the room. But I didn't come just for the win. I came for the dignity they took from me. So I looked Michael in the eye, steady and cold, and said, one condition. Everyone froze. I'll proceed with the joint infrastructure only if you're not involved. I don't deal with people who fire their architects mid-flight. The silence in the room turned heavy. Victor hesitated for just a breath, then nodded. I respect that. Michael's face collapsed into itself. For a moment. I saw not a CEO, but a man realizing the game was no longer his to play. He left the room without a word. Outside, San Francisco streets buzzed with late spring sun and tourists crowding cafe tables. I walked toward a nearby courtyard where Jamal and Sarah were waiting, both holding coffees, both watching the live feed from the summit on their phones. Heard you dropped a bomb. Sarah smirked. No bombs, I said, sitting beside them. Just balance restored. Jamal raised his cup. To the architect. I didn't raise mine. I wasn't finished yet. But for the first time in years, I felt like my name didn't need defending because I had walked into the room they tried to shut me out of and made it mine. At 7:45 in the morning, I walked into the Apex headquarters as the morning sun poured through the tall windows, casting long lines of light across the clean, polished floors. The space was quiet, but it wasn't cold. It hummed with a kind of calm energy, the kind that only comes from a place built with purpose. On the far wall, a new plaque had just been mounted, etched in brushed steel. It read, Apex, founded by Lauren Parker. Not tucked in footnotes, not hidden behind team credits, not erased or replaced. Just there, full, final, visible. I stood in front of it for a long moment, fingers lightly brushing the surface, remembering all the times my name had been written in drafts and then removed before the meeting. All the proposals where I did the work, but someone else presented the slide. All the press releases I edited that never once mentioned my contributions. They had taken so many pieces of my voice for so long, but they never really silenced me. And now I didn't need to raise my voice because the building spoke for me. Back upstairs, I stepped into the boardroom. Not the sterile, chrome-heavy kind Horizon used to favor, but one with warm wood, soft lighting, and walls that invited conversation, not domination. Patricia Evans from Euronet sat on one side of the table, reviewing an integration timeline with Jamal. Luis Mendez was on a video call in the corner, laughing about the last football game in Brazil. Hiroshi Tanaka had sent a gift 3 bonsai trees to place around the office, one for each continent Apex now supported. I sat at the head of the table, but it didn't feel like a throne. It felt like balance. That afternoon, I received a quiet notification on my phone. Emily Carter had resigned from her position. Effective immediately. No formal statement, no interviews, just a single line in the industry trades. Sources say the company is undergoing a shift in leadership structure following the collapse of several major partnerships. No one asked where she went. No one really cared. An hour later, another notification came through. Michael Carter removed from the Horizon board by unanimous vote. There was no scandal, no lawsuit, no meltdown on camera, just removal. A slow, quiet unraveling that mirrored exactly how they had tried to erase me. Only now, they were the ones disappearing. Without sound. Without legacy. Without anyone fighting to preserve their place. And me, I didn't cheer. I didn't celebrate because this had never been about revenge. It had always been about something simpler. More sacred reclamation. When I signed the final consolidated contract later that day, a joint agreement unifying all 3 triad partners under one multi-regional architecture, I didn't hesitate. I didn't think of the $1.5 billion. I didn't think of the headlines or the vindication. I just thought of my name, Lauren Parker, and how for the first time, I was signing as exactly who I was. No fear, no disguise, no delusion. I was no longer someone waiting to be recognized. I was remembered by default because this time, the foundation had my name carved into the frame. If you've ever had your name removed from a project you bled for, if you've ever stayed silent while someone else got the credit, if you've ever been told to let it go when what they really meant was let yourself go, then hear this. You're not invisible. You're not replaceable. And you're not done. Some battles don't need fire to win. They need focus. They need stillness. They need time. And when the time comes, let your presence speak louder than your pain. As Lauren stared at the Apex plaque bearing her name, she realized a truth that reshaped her core loyalty to a company is fleeting. But loyalty to her own vision is eternal. The sting of betrayal taught her that power isn't given, it's built. Quietly, strategically, and unapologetically. If Lauren's journey struck something in you, if you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or erased, don't stay silent. Like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories where the quiet ones rise, hit subscribe. We're just getting started. I'm Bailey Thompson, 32, and I thought I knew my family, until an email shattered everything. Excluded from Christmas and hit with an $8,100 invoice for my brother's European vacation, I faced a choice. Stay silent or fight for my worth. Stick around to see how I turned betrayal into empowerment. Growing up, I always felt like the understudy to my brother Ethan's lead role in our family. But nothing prepared me for what happened last Christmas. No invitation to dinner, just an $8,100 invoice for my brother's European vacation. My parents chose him again, but this time I chose myself. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family. Growing up in Westport, an affluent Seattle suburb should have been idyllic. Our craftsman-style house with its manicured lawn and heated swimming pool looked perfect from the outside. My parents, Margaret and Thomas Thompson, provided everything we needed materially. Dad was a successful tech executive. Mom, a former corporate lawyer who became a stay-at-home mother when Ethan was born. On paper, we were the American dream. But inside those pristine walls, I always felt like I was auditioning for a role I'd never get. From my earliest memories, Ethan was the son our family orbited around. 3 years younger than me, he had this effortless charm that made everyone gravitate toward him. His green eyes, identical to my father's, would light up, and somehow rules would bend. Ethan's just more sensitive, Mom would say when he'd throw tantrums about bedtime while I dutifully followed the 8:30 p.m. rule. He's artistic, Dad would explain when Ethan failed math, the same subject I received stern lectures about needing to excel in for college applications. When I turned 16, I wanted a car, not even a new one. I'd saved $3,000 from 2 years of babysitting and summer jobs. My parents told me they'd match half if I maintained my 4.0 GPA. I did and got a used Toyota Corolla. 6 months later, Ethan turned 16. Dad came home with a brand new Ford Mustang wrapped in a giant red bow. No conditions, no savings required. Your brother needs confidence, Mom explained when she saw my face. You've always been so independent, Bailey. Independent wasn't a choice. It was the only option I had. College followed the same pattern. I applied to 7 schools, got into Stanford, my dream school, but only received a partial scholarship. We can contribute $10,000 a year, my father announced. The rest is on you. It'll build character. I graduated with $87,000 in student loans. 2 years later, Ethan got accepted to USC for film studies. Not exactly a practical degree in my parents' usual assessment. Yet, they covered every penny of his $280,000 education, including a luxury apartment in Los Angeles, because dorms would stifle his creativity. Despite everything, I excelled. I graduated with honors, moved to Denver for an entry-level marketing position, and climbed the corporate ladder through sheer determination. 6 years later, at 32, I became the youngest senior marketing director at Peak Pulse Media, managing campaigns for Fortune 500 companies. My apartment in Lodo isn't extravagant, but it's mine. Every piece of furniture, every artwork on the wall, I purchased with money I earned. My social circle consists of genuine friends who appreciate me for who I am, not what I can provide. And Lucas, my boyfriend of 2 years, sees me in ways my family never did. You're incredible, Bailey, he'd say, watching me prepare presentations late into the night. Your drive amazes me. 3 months before last Christmas, I received a promotion that came with a substantial raise. I was ecstatic, immediately calling my parents to share the news. That's nice, honey, Mom said, distracted. Did I tell you Ethan is dating a producer's daughter? This could be his big break. 20 minutes of Ethan updates later, she had to go. My promotion remained unacknowledged. Holidays with my family were always an exercise in emotional endurance. Each Thanksgiving and Christmas, I'd fly to Seattle, bearing carefully selected gifts and prepared anecdotes that painted my life as successful without seeming boastful. I'd listen to endless stories about Ethan's latest film project or travel adventure, nodding and smiling appropriately. You're so lucky to have such a stable job, Bailey, Mom would say, as if my career achievements were some consolation prize compared to Ethan's artistic pursuits. Yet, I kept trying. I sent birthday cards, called weekly, remembered their anniversaries. I maintained the connection, not because they deserved it, but because I thought family should matter. Blood should be thicker than water, right? 2 weeks before last Christmas, Mom called, which was unusual. I was typically the one initiating contact. Bailey, darling, how are you? Her voice had that high-pitched quality it got when she was uncomfortable. I'm good. Busy with end-of-year campaigns, I replied, immediately sensing something was off. That's wonderful. Listen, about Christmas this year, things might be a little different. My stomach tightened. Different how? Well, we're doing some renovations on the house. The dining room is completely torn apart. It's going to be quite cramped. It was a bizarre excuse. Their house had 3 reception rooms and a conservatory. I can sleep on the couch if the guest room is affected, I offered. It's not just that, she continued, her voice trailing. Ethan is bringing Sophie. And you know how your father gets when too many people are around during the holidays. Yes, I knew exactly how my father got during holidays. He became the jovial patriarch who mixed perfect martinis and told embarrassing stories about Ethan's childhood adventures, while mine remained conspicuously absent from the family lore. So, what are you saying, Mom? Maybe this year it might be easier if we keep it small. That was the first indication that for the first time in my adult life, I wouldn't be welcome at my family's Christmas table. As December progressed, my inbox remained conspicuously empty of any formal Christmas invitation. In previous years, Mom would send an email by the first week of December outlining the holiday schedule with military precision. Christmas Eve dinner at 7 p.m. Church service at 11 p.m. Presents Christmas morning at 9 a.m. sharp, followed by brunch. By December 15th, with flights filling up and prices soaring, I couldn't ignore the silence any longer. I called home on my lunch break, pacing around my office with the door closed. Hi, Mom. I was wondering about the Christmas plans. I need to book my flight soon. There was a pause on the line. Too long to be natural. Oh, Bailey, didn't I mention we're doing things differently this year? In the background, I could hear my father's voice. Tell her we're just keeping it to the 3 of us and Sophie. The renovation makes it too crowded. My hand tightened around the phone. Mom, are you saying I'm not invited to Christmas? Another pause. Not invited, darling. It's just that with the dining room being renovated and Ethan bringing Sophie, the timing isn't ideal. You understand, don't you? You're so good at understanding. That was my role in the family. The one who understood, who accommodated, who never made waves. So Ethan and his girlfriend of 3 months are invited, but I'm not. My voice remained steady, though my free hand had curled into a fist. Sophie needs to experience a proper Thompson family Christmas, Mom explained, as if I were asking about a stranger rather than my own exclusion. And you've had 32 of them already. 32 Christmases where I sat at the table feeling like an audience member rather than part of the cast. 32 Christmases of watching Ethan receive thoughtful, expensive gifts while I got scented candles and generic sweaters. I see. I forced myself to sound neutral. Well, thanks for letting me know. You're not upset, are you? You've always been so independent. I thought you might even be relieved not to make the trip. You're probably so busy with work. I'm not upset. I lied. I'll figure something out. That's my girl, always so practical. We'll FaceTime on Christmas Day, of course. After hanging up, I sat at my desk staring at my computer screen without seeing it. The office Christmas party continued down the hall, laughter and holiday music creating a surreal soundtrack to my exclusion. I called Lauren, my best friend since college. They did what? She exploded after I explained. That's not doing things differently. That's uninviting you from your family Christmas while including your brother and his brand new girlfriend. That's messed up, Bailey. Maybe it really is about the renovation, I offered weakly. Oh, please, your parents' house is bigger than most hotels. This is next-level favoritism. Deep down, I knew she was right. Still, admitting it felt like failure, like confirming I wasn't worth including. That evening, Lucas came over with takeout Mexican food, listening as I recounted the conversation. Stay here for Christmas, he said, taking my hand. Come to my family's celebration. My mom already asks about you constantly. The thought of spending Christmas with Lucas's warm, chaotic family, his parents, 3 sisters, their partners, and 5 nieces and nephews, was tempting. They were loud, affectionate, and genuinely interested in each other's lives. I don't want to intrude on your family time, I hedged. Bailey, Lucas's voice was gentle but firm. You wouldn't be intruding. They want you there. Unlike some people, they actually value you. I spent the next week trying to convince myself it didn't matter. I was an adult. Christmas was just another day. I had Lucas, Lauren, and other friends who cared about me. Missing one family Christmas wasn't the end of the world. Yet each night I'd find myself scrolling through my mother's social media posts, pictures of their fully decorated house, the dining room looking completely untouched by any renovation, the massive tree in the living room with presents already piled beneath it. One photo showed 4 stockings hanging from the mantel. Mom, Dad, Ethan, and one presumably for Sophie. For 32 years, there had been a stocking with my name embroidered across the top. Where was it now? Packed away in the attic, given to Goodwill? The thought of it made my chest ache. On December 23rd, my mother sent a group text with a photo of Ethan and Sophie arriving at the house, luggage in hand. "The family is together for Christmas," the caption read. I stared at the word family until my vision blurred. I didn't respond to the text. Instead, I turned off my phone and helped Lucas wrap presents for his nieces and nephews, trying to focus on the Christmas I would have rather than the one I was denied. December 28th. The artificial Christmas tree in my apartment still twinkled in the corner, surrounded by gifts from Lucas, Lauren, and other friends. Despite my initial disappointment, Christmas with Lucas's family had been genuinely enjoyable. His mother had insisted I help make her secret recipe cinnamon rolls on Christmas morning. His father had called me kiddo and poured me extra bourbon in my eggnog, and his nieces had climbed into my lap during present opening, asking if I would braid their hair the pretty way later. It was warmth without conditions, inclusion without audition. My phone pinged with an email notification. My father's name appeared in the sender line with the subject, "Financial Matters Urgent." Dad rarely emailed me. Our communication typically passed through Mom or during the obligatory 5 minutes he'd speak to me when I called home. My finger hovered over the notification. The last time he'd contacted me directly was 3 years ago, when he needed information for his accountant about my student loans. I clicked open the email. Bailey attached. Please find an invoice for family expenses incurred during the 4th quarter. As you are now in a senior position with appropriate compensation, it is time for you to contribute to family costs proportionate to your means. Payment due by January 15th. Regards, Thomas Thompson. No Merry Christmas, no, how are you? Just a demand for money with a deadline. I opened the attached PDF, certain there must be some mistake. It was a formal invoice created with accounting software, bearing my father's company letterhead. The invoice included bank details for wire transfer and a note. Late payment will incur 1.5% weekly interest. I stared at my screen, unable to process what I was seeing. My parents had excluded me from Christmas dinner, a dinner that apparently had plenty of room for Ethan and his new girlfriend, and now were billing me $8,100 for my brother's European vacation and camera equipment. My phone rang. Lauren's name flashed on the screen. "Hey, I just got the weirdest email from my dad," I said in lieu of greeting. "What kind of weird?" "The kind where they send me an $8,100 invoice for Ethan's trip to Europe with his girlfriend and new camera equipment." "They what?" Lauren's voice rose so high it crackled through the speaker. "Tell me you're joking." I forwarded her the email while we were still on the phone. "Holy, Bailey, this is real. This isn't some kind of bizarre joke." "Apparently not. It has my father's company letterhead and everything." "But they excluded you from Christmas and then want you to pay for your brother's luxury vacation? That's beyond favoritism. That's exploitation." The word hit me like a slap. Exploitation. Had I been so normalized to being treated as less than that I couldn't recognize when I was being used? "You need to call them," Lauren insisted. "Right now." Hands shaking, I called my parents' home phone. Dad answered on the second ring. "Bailey, I assume you received my email?" "Dad, what is this? Why are you sending me an invoice for Ethan's trip?" "As I explained in the email, you're in a financial position to contribute to family expenses. Ethan needed that trip for his portfolio development. The European architecture series he shot will be featured in Sophie's studio next month." "But why am I paying for it? And for his girlfriend to go along?" Sophie provided essential artistic direction. he replied, as if it were perfectly reasonable. And you make good money now. Your brother is still establishing himself in a competitive field. Dad, I wasn't even invited to Christmas dinner. There was a pause. That's a separate issue. The house was crowded with the renovation. What renovation? Mom's been posting pictures of the house all month. Nothing's being renovated. Another pause. The plans changed. Regardless, this invoice reflects your fair share of family expenses. Fair share? I paid my own way through college. I have student loans I'm still paying off. Ethan got a free ride, and now you want me to fund his vacation? Your brother has different needs. His career requires travel and equipment. Your corporate job provides stability. The stability I'd fought for. The stability I'd earned without their help. Put Mom on the phone, please. I heard muffled voices, then my mother's tentative, "Hello? Mom, did you know about this invoice?" Well, yes, darling. Your father and I discussed it. Ethan really needed this opportunity, and we've been supporting him for so long. We thought, since you're doing so well now, you could... You canceled my Christmas invitation, but want me to pay for Ethan's trip with his girlfriend? We didn't cancel, Bailey. We just postponed your visit, and the trip was already booked before we realized the house would be too crowded. I took a deep breath. Have you ever sent Ethan an invoice for anything I needed? That's different. You've always been so independent, so capable. Because I had to be. I didn't have a choice. Bailey, please don't raise your voice. This is exactly why we thought a quieter Christmas made sense this year. You've been so stressed with work. The conversation continued in circles. Every question I asked was deflected with praise for my independence or references to Ethan's special needs as an artist. Before hanging up, I learned one final detail that crystallized everything. My parents had promised to send me a check for $500 for my birthday in November, a rare gesture of financial support from them. The check never arrived. Now I understood why. They canceled it to help cover Ethan's trip. After the call, I sat in stunned silence. All the years of unequal treatment flashed before me, not as isolated incidents, but as a pattern so clear it was impossible to unsee. My parents didn't see me as their daughter entitled to the same love and support as their son. They saw me as a resource to be tapped when their golden child needed more than they could provide. For the first time, I allowed myself to truly feel the anger that had been simmering beneath the surface for decades. They're never going to change, Lauren said over wine at my apartment the next evening. You realize that, right? I nodded, staring into my glass. I think I've always known. I just didn't want to believe it. What are you going to do about the invoice? Lucas asked, his arm protectively around my shoulders. I don't know yet. Part of me wants to pay it just to avoid the conflict. Another part wants to tell them to go to hell. The fact that you're even considering paying it shows how conditioned you are to accept their treatment, Lauren pointed out. Would Ethan ever receive an invoice for something you needed? We all knew the answer. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled out old photo albums from my childhood, searching for evidence that I'd somehow misremembered our family dynamic. Maybe there were times when my parents had shown me the same unconditional support they gave Ethan. The photos told the same story I already knew. Ethan front and center at family gatherings. Ethan with arms around both parents, me often slightly separated, sometimes literally in the background. In one Christmas photo, Ethan sat surrounded by open presents. A new gaming system, a mountain bike, designer clothes, while I held up a journal and scarf, smiling that tight smile I'd perfected to hide disappointment. By 3 a.m., I was searching through emails, finding patterns I'd normalized for years. Bailey, could you send Ethan $200 for his car repair? We're a bit tight this month, while they were vacationing in Hawaii. Your brother needs to focus on his film project. Could you call and wish him luck? On the day of my surgery. We're so proud of Ethan for pursuing his passion. When he quit his third job in a year. Congratulations on your promotion, honey. Can you help us set up our new phones when you visit? My promotion to management reduced to tech support. The next morning, bleary-eyed from lack of sleep, I called my therapist, Dr. Harper, and asked for an emergency session. What you're describing is a classic golden child, shot scapegoat dynamic, she explained after listening to my story. It's a form of family dysfunction where one child receives most of the positive attention while another shoulders the family's expectations and responsibilities. But why? My voice cracked. What did I do wrong? Nothing, Bailey. These roles are assigned early, often unconsciously. They rarely reflect anything about the children themselves. They're about the parents' needs and issues. So, what do I do about this invoice? That depends on what outcome you want. Paying it maintains the status quo. Refusing forces a confrontation that might change your relationship with your family, for better or worse. What if I lose them completely? Despite everything, the thought terrified me. Ask yourself this. Do you currently have the relationship you actually want with them, or the relationship you've been pretending is enough? The question hit hard. I'd been accepting scraps from the family table for my entire life, convincing myself it was a feast. That evening, I couldn't focus on anything. Lucas suggested a walk along the South Platte River to clear my head. The December wind whipped across the water, bitter cold, but clarifying. I keep thinking about what Dr. Harper said, I told him, our breaths forming clouds in the frigid air. About whether I have the relationship I want with my family. And do you? He asked simply. I have the relationship I've settled for because I was afraid of having no relationship at all. I stopped walking, turning to face him. I'm tired of being afraid, Lucas. I'm tired of being the responsible one who gets nothing in return. So, what are you going to do? For 3 more days, I oscillated between options, sleep-deprived and anxiety-ridden. Pay the invoice and maintain the peace. Refuse and face the fallout. Each path seemed equally terrifying. Then a strange thought occurred to me. I was still an authorized user on my parents' credit card accounts, arrangements made during college that had never been updated. I hadn't used the cards in years, but technically I still had access. This realization sparked something in me. Not a desire for revenge, but a recognition of my own power in this situation. For the first time, I saw clearly how my financial independence could be both my shield and my voice. After another session with Dr. Harper, focused on setting healthy boundaries, I made my decision. I wouldn't just respond to the invoice. I would redefine my relationship with my family on my terms. I need to take a stand, I told Lucas that night. Not out of spite, but because nothing will change if I don't. I'm with you, he said, squeezing my hand. Whatever you decide. I spent hours researching family dynamics and narcissistic family systems, recognizing patterns that had defined my life. I calculated exactly how much my parents had spent on Ethan compared to me over the years, not to hold it against them, but to confirm the reality I'd always felt but couldn't prove. The numbers were staggering. College alone represented a difference of nearly $300,000, not including the Los Angeles apartment. Birthday and Christmas gifts showed a consistent pattern. Items for Ethan typically cost 3 to 5 times what mine did. With clarity came resolve. I knew exactly what my response would be. You're still an authorized user on their credit cards? Lauren's eyes widened when I explained my discovery. All of them? 3 major ones, as far as I know. I haven't used them since college, but legally I could. Are you thinking what I think you're thinking? Her expression was part concern, part admiration. I'm not going to charge anything, I clarified quickly. I'm not looking for revenge, but being removed as an authorized user is a step I should have taken years ago. It's a financial boundary I need to set. I scheduled an appointment with Rachel Bennett, the financial advisor I'd been working with since paying off my student loans. Her office overlooked the Denver skyline, the city skyscrapers providing a backdrop that reminded me of how far I'd come on my own. Removing yourself as an authorized user won't affect your credit score significantly, Rachel explained after hearing my situation. You've established your own credit history, but I'd recommend doing it for all accounts simultaneously, so there's no opportunity for new charges to be added before you complete the process. Can I do it without them being notified immediately? When you're removed, they won't receive an automatic notification, but they'll notice when they get their next statement and your name is no longer listed. Or sooner if they try to check your status online. I nodded, making notes. And what about a response to this invoice? Any professional advice? Rachel leaned back in her chair, choosing her words carefully. Professionally speaking, this isn't a valid invoice. You didn't agree to these expenses, you received no benefit from them, and there was no contract. You have no legal obligation to pay. And personally speaking, she smiled slightly. I'd tell them exactly what I thought of their accounting practices. That afternoon, I called each credit card company explaining that I needed to be removed as an authorized user on my parents' accounts. Each representative asked the same questions. Was there fraudulent activity? Was I concerned about liability? I simply stated that I was establishing financial independence. 3 calls, 3 confirmations. Within an hour, my financial entanglement with my parents was severed. It felt both terrifying and liberating. Next, I needed to craft my response to the invoice. I wrote draft after draft, each one either too angry or too apologetic. Nothing captured the complex emotions I needed to express. Lucas found me surrounded by crumpled paper at my desk that evening. Still working on your response? He asked, setting a cup of tea beside me. Nothing feels right. If I'm too harsh, I'm the villain. If I'm too nice, nothing changes. He sat on the edge of the desk. What if your response isn't about the words at all? That's when the idea crystallized. Words had failed me in this family for decades. Perhaps actions would speak louder. I researched exactly how much my parents had contributed to my education and upbringing compared to Ethan. I created a spreadsheet documenting each disparity: college tuition, living expenses, vehicles, extracurricular activities, even estimated Christmas and birthday gifts. The pattern was undeniable and quantifiable. In my second emergency therapy session that week, Dr. Harper helped me process my emotions and clarify my intentions. This isn't about punishing them, I explained. It's about finally acknowledging the truth we've all been dancing around my entire life. And what truth is that, Bailey? That I've never been equally valued in my family, that I've been expected to give more and receive less, that my worth has always been measured differently than my brother's. What do you hope will happen when you respond? I thought about it carefully. Best case scenario, they recognize the pattern and we begin to build a healthier relationship. Worst case, they cut me off completely. I took a deep breath, but I realize now that what I have with them isn't much of a relationship anyway. It's an arrangement where I keep showing up hoping for approval I never receive. That's an important recognition, Doctor. Harper nodded. Are you prepared for either outcome? For the first time, I could honestly answer yes. That night, I wrote one final draft of my response letter. Simple, direct, without accusation or apology. Then I went to my bank and withdrew $1 in cash. I purchased a blank greeting card with a winter scene on the front, not explicitly Christmas-themed, but reminiscent of the holiday I'd been excluded from. Inside the card, I wrote just 7 words. Santa skipped me too. Merry Christmas anyway. I placed the dollar bill and my letter in the card, then sealed it in an envelope addressed to my parents. I added a certified mail receipt request, not out of pettiness, but because I needed confirmation this chapter wouldn't be swept under the rug like so many others. As I dropped the envelope in the mailbox, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. A weight I'd been carrying for so long I'd forgotten it wasn't supposed to be there. The certified mail receipt arrived in my email 3 days later. My parents had received my response. Then, silence. No calls, no texts, no emails. The silence lasted exactly 27 hours before my phone exploded with notifications. First, a series of text messages from my father. What is the meaning of this dollar bill? Call me immediately. This is completely unacceptable, Bailey. Then voicemails, his voice progressively rising in anger. I just received notice that you've removed yourself from our credit accounts. Explain yourself. Your mother is extremely upset. This childish behavior needs to stop now. If this is about the invoice, we can discuss payment plans. my mother's approach was different. A single tearful voicemail. Bailey, honey, why are you doing this to us after everything we've done for you? Your father is furious. Please call and fix this. Everything they'd done for me. The phrase stuck in my craw. What exactly did she think they'd done for me that earned them the right to invoice me for my brother's vacation? Ethan's contribution came next. Aggressive text messages accusing me of selfishness. Way to make everything about you as usual. Mom's been crying all day. You know I need that equipment for my career. Not everyone gets a cushy corporate job. Did it ever occur to you that maybe they give me more because I actually make time for them instead of running away to Denver? The family narrative was being rewritten in real time. Suddenly, I was the villain who abandoned the family, not the daughter who'd been uninvited from Christmas. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I forwarded the messages to Dr. Harper and focused on my work, though concentration proved nearly impossible. By evening, the extended family had joined the fray. Cousins I barely spoke to sent messages asking why I was attacking Uncle Thomas and Aunt Margaret. My mother's sister suggested I needed to remember family comes first. Then came a surprise. A text from my father's sister, Aunt Susan. Can we talk? Not about them. About you. Susan had always been somewhat distant from our family gatherings, appearing briefly at major events but never staying long. As a child, I'd assumed she just didn't like family functions. Now, I wondered if there was more to the story. We met at a quiet cafe the following weekend. Susan was 15 years younger than my father, with the same sharp green eyes but a warmth his never contained. I got a call from your mother, she began after we'd settled with our coffees. She was quite upset about some dollar bill and credit cards. I'm sure she was, I replied cautiously. Susan studied me for a moment. You know, you look just like our grandmother, my mother. She was the responsible one, too. What do you mean? In her family, 4 siblings, but she was the one expected to care for their parents, manage the finances, be the sensible one. Susan stirred her coffee. Sound familiar? Did Dad do the same thing to you that they're doing to me? I asked directly. She smiled sadly. Thomas was the golden child. Always was. I was the afterthought, the surprise baby my parents hadn't planned for. I paid my own way through community college while they funded his Ivy League education. I got lectured about responsibility while he got bailed out of every bad decision. The parallels were striking. So, it's a family pattern. Generational. She nodded. And it won't change unless someone breaks it. Is that why you stay away from family gatherings? I learned my worth wasn't dependent on their recognition of it. I built my own life, my own family. I show up when I want to, not because I'm seeking approval I'll never get. For the first time, I felt truly understood by a member of my family. We talked for hours, Susan sharing stories that could have been mine with different names and dates. The same expectations, the same disparities, the same excuses. I'm proud of you, she said as we prepared to leave. Standing up to them takes courage. Whatever happens next, remember you did nothing wrong by expecting to be treated equally. Her words fortified me for what came next. A 3-hour phone call with my parents that evening. I hadn't planned to answer when they called, but something in me felt ready for the confrontation. Bailey, this has gone far enough. My father began without preamble. Your mother and I expect you to apologize and pay the invoice as requested. I'm not apologizing, Dad, and I'm not paying for Ethan's vacation. This isn't about the money, he insisted. It's about your responsibility to the family. My responsibility? What about your responsibility to treat your children equally? We've always treated you and Ethan according to your individual needs, my mother interjected, her voice wobbling. You're just different people. You're right. We are different. Ethan needs constant support, validation, and funding. I apparently need nothing from you. Not even a place at the Christmas table. That's not fair, Bailey, Mom protested. The renovation... There was no renovation. I finally raised my voice. I saw all the pictures you posted. The dining room was perfectly intact. You excluded me and then tried to bill me for Ethan's trip in the same month. Can you honestly not see how hurtful that is? The conversation cycled through familiar patterns. My mother cried. My father dismissed my concerns as oversensitivity. I was accused of jealousy, ingratitude, and failing to understand how families work. But something had changed. I was no longer desperate for their approval or afraid of their disapproval. I could see the manipulation in real time. I've calculated exactly how much more you've spent on Ethan than on me, I told them calmly. Would you like to hear the numbers? This isn't about mathematics, my father snapped. Actually, an invoice is exactly about mathematics. You sent me one, remember? For the first time in my life, I laid out every inequity I'd experienced, from college funding to Christmas gifts, from emotional support to practical help. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I simply stated facts they couldn't refute. My father dismissed my evidence. You've always been financially responsible. Ethan is an artist. My mother tried a different approach. Honey, we're getting older. We need to know we can count on you when the time comes. The implication was clear. Despite the lifetime of favoritism toward Ethan, I was expected to be the responsible caretaker when they aged. I'll always be there for you as your daughter, I said carefully. But not as your blank check or your unpaid caretaker. Those days are over. After I hung up, I felt drained but strangely peaceful. I'd spoken my truth without apology. Whatever happened next, I'd broken the cycle of silent acceptance. To my surprise, Ethan called the following day. His tone was different. Less aggressive, more uncertain. Mom and Dad are really upset, he began. I know. A long pause. The thing is, Bailey, I never asked them to send you an invoice. I didn't even know they did that until yesterday. Would you have stopped them if you knew? Another pause. I don't know. Probably not. At least he was honest. It's always been easy to accept what they give me. I know, Ethan. That's not really your fault. I'm not a kid anymore. I should have questioned it more. His voice dropped. Do you hate me? No, I answered truthfully. I don't hate you, but I do need things to change. I don't know how to be different in this family, he admitted. I've always been the favorite. It's comfortable. I'm sure it is, but it's destroyed my relationship with all of you. We talked for nearly an hour, the most real conversation we'd ever had. Ethan revealed his own insecurities beneath the privileged facade. The pressure to succeed artistically when he sometimes wondered if he had any real talent. The fear that he couldn't survive without our parents' support. The knowledge that he'd never developed the resilience I had. You're the strong one, he said. You always have been. Not by choice, I reminded him. We ended the call with no promises, but a new understanding. Whether it would translate to real change remained to be seen. Over the next several months, my relationship with my family transformed. My parents made awkward, halting attempts at more balanced treatment. Sometimes they succeeded. Often they fell back into old patterns. But the silent acceptance was gone. Each time they treated Ethan preferentially, I called it out calmly and directly. The first family gathering after the invoice incident was my father's birthday in April. The tension was palpable. Conversations stilted. Ethan brought his portfolio to show everyone. A habitual center of attention move. But when he finished, he turned to me and asked about my recent marketing campaign. A small gesture, but unprecedented. My mother pulled me aside as I was leaving. I owe you an apology, she said, her voice low. For Christmas. For a lot of things. It wasn't a comprehensive acknowledgement of decades of inequity, but it was a start. My father found it harder to change. His vision of family was hierarchical, with him at the top and everyone slotted into roles he'd assigned. But even he began making small adjustments, asking about my work, remembering details about my life, acknowledging my achievements without immediately pivoting to Ethan. The invoice was never mentioned again. No payment was ever made. 6 months after receiving that outrageous invoice, my life had changed in ways I couldn't have predicted. The confrontation that I'd feared for decades had actually been liberating rather than devastating. My relationship with my parents was different. Not perfect, but more honest. The facade of family harmony had been replaced by something more authentic. We argued sometimes. I stated boundaries clearly. They occasionally respected them. Ethan surprisingly showed the most growth. Our conversation had sparked something in him, perhaps recognition of his own role in our family's dysfunction. He started therapy, took a part-time job at a film studio, and began paying for more of his own expenses. He still received more support from our parents than I ever had, but the blatant inequity had diminished. I never realized how much I was missing by always being the favorite. He told me during one of our now regular phone calls. I never had to develop resilience or self-reliance. I'm 30 years old and just learning skills you mastered at 18. My mother made tentative efforts to balance her attention and affection. She called regularly, asked questions about my life, and actually listened to the answers. When she slipped into old patterns, talking excessively about Ethan or dismissing my achievements, I gently pointed it out. Sometimes she adjusted. Sometimes she became defensive, but the pattern was acknowledged rather than ignored. My father found change hardest. His generation and personality resisted the vulnerability required for real connection. But even he made efforts, sending an email congratulating me on a successful campaign, remembering my birthday with a card that contained an actual personal message rather than just his signature. The family dynamic hadn't transformed overnight. Decades of established patterns couldn't be erased in 6 months. But the ground had shifted, creating space for a different kind of relationship to grow. In my personal life, the changes were even more profound. The confidence I gained from standing up for myself translated to every area of my life. At work, I became more assertive, proposing bold campaign ideas that previously I might have kept to myself. I received another promotion, this one coming with a team of my own to manage. Lucas noticed the change immediately. "You carry yourself differently," he observed. "Like you finally believe what I've always known, that you're extraordinary." Our relationship deepened as I learned to accept love without constantly questioning whether I deserved it. 6 months after the invoice incident, he proposed during a weekend trip to Colorado's wine country. I said yes without hesitation or doubt. My friendship with Lauren strengthened as well. She'd been my rock through the entire ordeal, offering unwavering support without judgment. "You know what's amazing?" she said over brunch one Sunday. "Watching you finally demand the respect you've always deserved. It's like you've given yourself permission to take up space." Perhaps the most significant change was my relationship with myself. The constant need for validation and approval that had driven me since childhood began to fade. I continued therapy, working through the lingering effects of growing up as the less favored child. Dr. Harper helped me recognize patterns of people-pleasing and perfectionism that had developed as responses to my family dynamic. Inspired by my own experience, I developed a financial independence workshop for women, focusing on those from family situations similar to mine. The first session filled immediately, with attendees sharing stories that echoed my own. The workshop became a monthly event, creating a community of women learning to establish financial and emotional boundaries. "Your story helped me stand up to my own family," one participant told me after a session. "I never realized I was allowed to expect equal treatment until I heard you talk about your experience." In July, my parents invited me to their anniversary dinner, a small gathering at their home. It was my first time back since the Christmas I'd been excluded from. Walking into that house felt strange, both familiar and different. My mother had redecorated the living room, replacing the formal furniture with more comfortable pieces. Family photos lined the mantel, including several of me that hadn't been displayed before. "We found these when we were organizing the attic," Mom explained, noticing me looking at them. "I realized we didn't have enough pictures of you around the house." Dinner was awkward, but not unbearable. Ethan brought Sophie, who turned out to be surprisingly thoughtful and intelligent. My father made an effort to ask about my work. My mother served my favorite dessert, something she'd rarely done in the past. After dinner, my mother pulled me aside while the others were in the living room. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "I'm sorry, Bailey. Truly sorry. I didn't realize how much we were hurting you all these years. You excluded me from Christmas, Mom, then tried to bill me for Ethan's vacation. How could you not realize that would hurt?" She looked down. "When you're in a pattern for so long, you stop seeing it. Ethan was always so demanding, so needy. You were so confident, so self-sufficient. It was easier to focus on him. Easier isn't the same as right. I know that now." She reached for my hand. "I can't change the past, but I'm trying to do better going forward." It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't erase decades of unequal treatment, but it was acknowledgement, and that was something I'd never received before. My father found his own way to communicate change. As we were leaving, he handed me an envelope. "What's this?" I asked, suspicious of envelopes from him after the Invoice incident. "Open it later," was all he said. In the car, I tore it open to find a check for $8,100, the exact amount of the invoice he'd sent me 6 months earlier. No note, no explanation, just the check. I didn't cash the check. Instead, I framed it and hung it in my home office. A reminder that I had the power to change patterns that seemed unchangeable, to demand respect when it wasn't freely given, to value myself even when others didn't. The invoice that was meant to diminish me became the receipt for my freedom. Standing up for yourself isn't easy, especially when it means confronting the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally. But sometimes that confrontation is necessary for healing, both for yourself and potentially for your relationships. I don't know what the future holds for my family. Patterns established over decades don't disappear overnight. But I do know that I'll never again accept being valued less than I deserve, by my family or anyone else. That night, staring at the framed check in my office, I realized a truth I'd avoided for years. My worth isn't tied to my family's approval. By standing up to their unfair treatment, I learned to value myself, not just as their daughter, but as someone deserving of equal love and respect. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who treated you unfairly? What helped you find the courage to draw boundaries? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else currently struggling with similar issues. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they deserve equal treatment and respect in all their relationships. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, but by how you choose to treat yourself.